Thank you for coming. Ian, would you come up? Is Ian Blume, our editor?
So, while Ian's making his way up,
Yes.
let's start with, I think I want to start with the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Lucas.
Okay. Lucas.
Can you talk about kind of the process of getting him involved and was it a no-brainer? Was it just bringing him on? Did you write it for him in mind?
Well, he was never going, he made it pretty clear after the disastrous experience when he played a small part in Dan in Real Life when he was 8 years old, that he would never, ever be in a movie with me that I was a part of again. So I never imagined he would do the film. I did want to write a script that I have the great gift of being the father of two young men, and I wanted to write something that I thought they'd be proud of, because they were little, particularly my older son, was like, well, do you have to keep making movies for Disney? Can't you get back to Pieces of April and Gilbert Grape? So anyway, Lucas, I'm sure I was imagining him in the part, but I never thought he would do it. He wasn't even available for when I knew we were going to try to shoot the film. It wasn't until Julia read the script and signed on, and then started explaining to me why Lucas had to do the part. And I said, well, he's not available, and he doesn't want to work with me. And, she started sending texts. She has three beautiful children. One of them has red hair, and she would send pictures of her with her red-haired son and say, look how good I am with red-haired boys. And my wife was like, do not show that to Lucas. That will put pressure on him. And at that point, the play he was going to do had gone away. So he was available. But finally I said, I'm going to have to show this picture because Julia's going to be really angry if I don't. And I did. And he was very touched by that. And I think the idea of working with her was so exciting. And that he really believed in what the story was about. So,
can we talk a little bit about the two of you and your collaboration?
Sure.
How did you come to work together? What was the process by which you decided to do this movie together, and also what is the editing process like? Especially working with somebody who wrote the film.
Right. Well, Diane Dreyer, who has worked with me since Gilbert Grape, she was a co-producer on the film. She directed a film that's opening actually, I think tomorrow night. Called Change in the Air, and she's the smartest person in every room that she's ever in. She's so smart. And she told me that Ian should cut this film. And so I met with him twice. And you want to go from there, Ian?
Well, Diane, first of all, hey, Philly.
He's a Philly boy, kind of. Yes, you are, really.
Or he's New Jersey. Yeah.
New Jersey, but he's a suburb.
Diane's my fairy godmother. That really sums it up. She, when we were cutting her film, Peter came over to my small apartment to watch it. Very early work in progress version of it, and I was gifted by the feedback from a very, very brilliant man. Then a year later, Diane relentlessly insisted that Peter meet with me when he was considering editors. We had 2 meetings, the second of which was like 3 hours long in your kitchen.
Yeah, that's when Ian started to tell me all the things I could probably do to improve things.
Almost cost
himself the job. No. He came back from his honeymoon to meet with me, and thank you, Kara, for letting him do that. The editing process is honestly, along with the work you do with actors, it's such an intimate process, particularly a film like mine, where, or ours, because it's ours, where there are directors, and I love these directors like Wes Anderson, who knows exactly what he wants. He hears it, he sees it, and the movie resembles very much what he imagined it would be. Ben is back because my films are really about the people and how the people interact. I try to create an environment where we court surprise, where moments occur that maybe I couldn't have imagined, or I have a picture of what it could be, but I'm always looking for it to be more than I could have hoped it could be. And so what I really look for in an editor is someone who loves actors, who has a real capacity to hear them and have a connection with their performances. And I'm staggered at the work that Ian brought to this film. He would find moments, he'd remember beats and things that I didn't even know were there. I can't even say enough about him. I think you're going to be watching his films for years and years. I hope some of them are mine.
I'm going to open it up in a second, but
Sure.
I want to ask one other question. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've done a lot of work that involves family.
Yes.
That, your films very much center on family in a way. And the way you talk about the crew, obviously, you have family in the cast, but the way you talk about the crew, the way you talk about Julia, it all sounds like a family. Is that important to you to kind of build a family environment
Completely.
together? Is that part that you're cultivating on set?
Very, very much. I mean, it's when in editing we had a thing. What do we call it? It was a committee, and even our we had a really great. I guess he was kind of an intern, but he was the apprentice editor on our film who was making a career choice change midlife. And I bring people in all the time, and we would watch. Ian and I would work, and then we'd bring in the assistants and such, and we'd watch the footage, and I would basically listen for why they loved something, not to see who liked what, but why. And there are so many moments in the movie or restructures of sequences that are informed by a really smart person. And I believe that if you create an environment that is safe and joy-based, because this is a really hard movie to make. I mean, it's devastating, day after day, to do these scenes. We made it with a tremendous amount of joy.
Trust.
And trust. I want everybody who worked on the movie to feel ownership in it. I don't mind that, if an idea comes from somewhere else other than my own, from me, which is often the case, you just are if the goal is to make the most impactful movie, then it's easy. If it's to make the movie that I need it to be, to validate my inflated sense of myself, that's not so much fun for other people, because then it's smaller, it's a smaller movie. So, a healthy family is a family where you're heard and you're respected and you're seen and you're appreciated and you're safe. And so that's what we just try to do. And I feel like if you're making a movie that's about the human condition or exploring some of the darker, harder aspects of what it means to be alive right now in this hard world, then it's best to find a way to empower everyone involved and to make the movie together. So it made, I think, for a really satisfying editorial experience. I've had many good editorial experiences, but my favorite ever, and a process that. There are just so many moments. If you want, we can watch the movie again, and I can stop and point out these places where I was so, I'm so proud that I was humble enough to know that I'm not that smart, and that I just wanted to make something impactful, and other people's imprint is everywhere, and that's one of the best parts. I'm a novelist. I wrote novels for many years. I don't write them at the moment. I know I can go in a room and write my own story and publish it. But to get to make something with other people, you all work somewhere. And those jobs where you're heard and respected, and those jobs where it's just a pain in the ass because you're working for a mad person who's never happy. And you're diminished, but so we try to make one of those gigs where it's like, wow, that was special. That's what we try to do. ramble and get started.
I just want to add one small part to that, which is, I think one of the discoveries we made pretty early on when we were showing the film to people, even if it's in its roughest form, was that this film affects people very differently, depending on their own relationships with addiction, their own familiarity, whether it's personal or a family member or a friend, or whether they have no experience whatsoever. It affects everyone in a very different way. And to pigeonhole the film and make it one thing would be limiting what the impact that it kind of needs to have, especially today. And I think by keeping our door open and by constantly, kind of bouncing it off of people, and some people were just not ready for it. Like, some people didn't even know what they were getting into. You go to see some of Peter's older films, and the way this film opens, it kind of sets you up for another Peter Hedges experience, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, someone's turning up the heat in here. And all of a sudden I don't trust this kid, and I don't know, I'm just waiting for him to betray me, and I think people have their own relationships with that. And I think, our process really kind of tapped into that and made this film work on that level.
Well said, Ian Blume.
I'm going to open up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Let's start over here. In the red. Oh, were you just raising your hand?
She's deferring to me. You had suggested we watch the film again, which is okay with me, because I loved it.
Oh, thank you. You're my favorite person.
What I would like you to tell me, and the rest of us, is one example of how the editor changes what's happening in a way that makes it totally different than the way it was originally filmed or conceived.
So the question was one example of how the editor, changes what's happening in a way that is impactful to the film, to what the original vision is versus what we end up seeing on screen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my brain is exploding with so many examples. Do we want to get into... In the second half of the movie, some things were reordered in a very significant way. I mean, I don't know where to start on this.
I think it's mostly just about unearthing connections. A lot of that was very beautifully written and very beautifully shot. But I think we made a discovery also pretty early on that anything that sort of reminds you that you're watching a movie, it kind of had to... We had to take a good hard look at that, because
great example.
The film
it
really
felt like a movie. Certain shots, certain angles. Sometimes I wanted to show off a bit, and you go, wait a minute. What if we take that out? A lot of editing, a lot of great writing too, but editing is figuring out what you don't need. So there are a number of instances where there were some scenes that we took out that I think allowed you to feel more. For instance, at the end of the movie, there used to be Ben used to send a text to her. She turns around and drives back. She used to send a text saying, "Mom, I did the best I could. I love you," And when you read it, it's very powerful. And a lot of people thought it was great. And Julia stops the car and she screams, and then she drives on, or Holly, and then she turns around. But we found that we didn't need it. Another great example is there's that really wonderful scene when she goes to the pharmacist and says, the naloxone is out of date. That used to happen much later in the film. And in one of our committee sessions, the associate editor, I think she made the first suggestion was that Holly needs, the first thing she needs to do after she leaves the mother's house is go right to the pharmacy. But in the script, it used to be much later, so it's that, and then there are scenes that we didn't have a lot of time to shoot. The scene in the gas station, the cemetery scene. You know, we were running. You know, my favorite scene in the film, the scene in the store when she's trying on the clothes and he locks the door. We had 4 hours to shoot that scene because it had been a blizzard and it was supposed to be in 2 scenes. It was supposed to have, it was supposed to be outside. So some of it's the external challenges you have, but some of it is that you think you need more than you need, and you hopefully are with a person who can see things that, you know, I can't always see clearly. And Ian has a great ability to see. And I think it's his good heart and his incredible intelligence. It's just a happy marriage, those two things in one person. Well done, Kara. That's his wife. Hi, I'll give quicker answers. And Ian always gives quick answers.
I'm going to go to the back right there.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm a reporter for the Inquirer here in Philly. I cover the opioid crisis. And I was just curious about the research that you did for this film about, you know, kind of getting the details right. Like, you know, when the friend said that he's not getting high anymore, he's getting well. When, you know, the mom had the old version of naloxone. You know, and I was just like struck by like these small details that made it feel really lived in and really like authentic. And I was wondering what sort of research went to that.
So the question was about the research you did to get the details right in terms of the opioid crisis.
Right. After Philip Seymour Hoffman overdosed and died, my favorite actor ever, and then a friend soon after, a very good friend, overdosed and died, and then a family member nearly overdosed and died, and then my family rallied and she went through detox and she's now several years clean. I was awakened to the heroin opioid aspect of addiction, although I grew up in a family of addicts. My mother was an alcoholic, she's no longer living. And I also saw my mother get sober when I was 15, and then I watched her for 22 years save hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lives. She used to give coffee to people on the street in San Francisco when she worked at the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. She was so good at what she did that when she had a heart attack in 1994, I went racing to the hospital at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York to beat the ambulance. And I'm waiting for the ambulance and a doctor's standing there. And he says, "You must be Peter." And I said, "How do you know that?" And I think he said, "You must be Carol's son, or you must be Peter. How did you know that?" He said, "Well, you look just like your mom." I said, "Do you know my mom?" And he said, "Yeah. 12 years ago, I was a heroin addict in San Francisco and the Haight. And your mother brought me coffee every morning for 6 months. And one day she said, I think I may have a way to help you. And I got clean and I became a doctor." And he said, "I am now a doctor. 12 years ago, your mother saved my life, and now I'm a doctor in this hospital, and I'm standing here waiting to save hers." So I talked to, I did so much reading, so much research. The older woman in the meeting was the counselor for my family when we went through 2 years of therapy telephonically while one of my relatives was going through her recovery and is still in recovery. She advised me. We had an EMT people on the set, because I kind of wanted somebody to wake up from a naloxone dose a little differently, a little more cinematically, and I was told that could happen, but be unlikely. It's important to get as much of it right as I could. By compressing the story so it took place over a day, I want to just rage against the pharmaceutical companies. I want to go after doctors. I'm so angry that our prisons are filled with people, particularly minority men and women, who are in jail because they were high or addicted to drugs when they committed their crimes, because we don't understand in our country it's a disease. All of those things mattered to me, but I felt like I had to stay, and I used to have some pieces in the movie that were a little more preachy, and we ended up cutting some of them, but it needs to feel as real because for people who've been through it or deal with it as you do, and for people who don't know anything about it, who say, why don't they just stop? why don't we just stop? I'm not saying we covered everything, but if this story isn't done with some sense of believability, then there isn't much use for it. So that's what we tried to do. Thank you for your question. I hope I answered it. Okay. I'll be quicker, I promise.
We have time for a couple more.
No, we're staying to midnight. I'm going to stay till one person's left.
Let's go right here. Yeah.
How old were you when you shot Gilbert Grape?
So the question was, how old were you when you shot Gilbert Grape?
Sir, get those glasses fixed. I'm so old. I started writing Gilbert Grape when I was 23, the novel, and the book came out when I was 28. And I remember this perfectly because I was completely broke. I'd never made more than $7,000 in a year. And then I turned 30 and we shot the movie. And I proposed to my wife because I thought I could make a living now. And then we had 2 kids. And if I hadn't done any of that, there'd be no Dennis Backus, there'd be no Lucas, and there'd be no happy marriage. And maybe I'd know Ian, hopefully.
Let's take another one right here.
I'm going to ask the question on behalf of the audience. How is it to work with Julia Roberts?
How is it to work with Julia Roberts?
Okay. Can you just try to imagine that? Just take a moment. Just go. What's your name?
Aaron.
Aaron? Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm Aaron, and I just got a text on 9/11 from Julia Roberts saying, I've talked to my family and I want to do your film. So imagine, just soak that in. Say to yourself, this is the actress that's been my favorite movie star since I was 22 years old. I'm older than she is, or 24, whatever. I mean, she's an amazing, amazing artist. She's a great mother. She's so, one of the reasons you don't see her a lot right now is she's really a mom, mostly a mom. That's why I thought she'd be great, because this is the best and most complex and fierce and fragile mom I've ever written. It was amazing to work with her. But the hard part is that and Ian knows this, she's like ready to go take one right away. And I once know a guy who played basketball with Magic Johnson in a pickup game, and he said it was uncanny. He knew where to throw he would put the ball always in my hand, right it, and I never knew the ball was coming, and then it was right there, and I kept missing shots because it was like, and I felt like half of the shoot I was missing shots all the time, and so, but what I love about her is her ferocity. She's worked with all the greats, and I'm not that great, and genuinely mean that. I'm okay with it. She's worked with Mike Nichols and Steven Soderbergh, so I just tried to keep up. But she left it all on the screen. I mean, she brought it every day, so it was pretty great. Yeah. Back here.
Hey, thank you so much. My name is Andrew Berkey, and I'm a person in long-term recovery and coming up on 17 years from a heroin use. My wife Liz is coming up on 11 years. And, so many films about the struggle of addiction, and we both came in really young and didn't succeed the first time, and we both had moms that were just, this kid's gonna make it or die. And those are the only 2 possible scenarios, that never gave up even when they were justified to. And I am just, you're gonna go on and win awards, but you remember when you came to Philly and you played this, I mean, the impact that it had on me, I've never watched a film about like the struggle of early recovery like this, and I've never watched a film about the struggle my mom went through, and I had a very visceral reaction. And you're amazing. Don't sell yourself short. You're one of the greatest.
I just want you to know that, and I mean this, when I made this film, when we made this film, and I said this to Ian, I say it all the time, I said the only award I want, the only thing I want is for one person at some point to tap me on the shoulder and tell me what you just told me. That's all I want. That's it. That's why we made this movie. I'm so deeply touched that for you and your wife for first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you said. I'm deeply moved. Yeah, no, I love this. Let's go ahead, bring it on.
Okay, I see it different than he does, but I have to thank you very much for it. I lost my 19-year-old son 4 years ago, his first trial. So I see how important it is for this movie to get out there, to make people see how real this is.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
What was your son's name?
Great.
Brady?
Great.
Grady? Wow. How old was he?
19.
Sorry. Thank you for saying what you said.
Thank you.
Okay. Keep going. Okay. Right here.
One thing that impressed me very much through thinking of the film is the atmosphere you created of the unbearable tension and brittleness, which never lets up. During the viewing of the film, I was thinking, oh my God, this is so badly cut, oh, I can't stand this, I want to get up and leave. I'm so nervous. But if you had relinquished that, it would be a fake film. It's precisely this atmosphere of relentless tension, which I think, I'm not an addict, I don't know any addicts, but my guess is that this is a true bedrock of what it is to be an addict and what it is to be family living with an addict. This all-encompassing, continuous tension, even when you're sleeping. And while during the film I had a lot of criticism, once the film was over and I thought about it, I realized that this is what makes your film so remarkable. You don't feel this in any other films about addicts. Those other films are at a remove.
Right.
And you don't really feel what it is. This film sort of envelops you with this tension and makes you understand at a visceral level what this situation is about. And I'm very, very impressed with that.
Thank you so much.
So, just for the rest of the audience, it was a comment about the way you were able to envelop us in the amount of tension that the characters are feeling.
Right.
Maybe both of you can comment a little bit about ratcheting that up, and especially like in the performances too, both in the editing and in the performances.
Well, our goal was that the first real breath you take in the movie is his breath at the end. That was kind of the goal. Not just because it's true in my experience that's the fear that people are who are dealing with this, deal with every day, every moment, and people like this, so that's what we tried to do.
Yeah, that's something we talked about a lot, and that I think Julia said in one of her interviews was that the answers that you have as a parent or a friend or relative of an addict may be right in 1 hour and completely wrong. And that pretty much sets the bar, like, this is what's at stake here, because it's a very beautiful warm, caring environment. And there's a lot of skepticism on behalf of, from the sister and the stepfather, but it's all very in service of one thing, and that thing can tip when, if your guard goes down for a second. It completely changes. So in a lot of ways, in Peter's script, I mean, that was all there. And the way it went into, it informed the way you shot the film, stylistically, the camera's moving around, you're living in the moments, which is why what I said earlier about anything that sort of kind of felt movie, like the best version of this film feels very real. And the tension is there. If you're serving that, the tension carries itself. And you just have to keep that going and not interrupt it.
We have time for one more because I got to get the theater back so they can prep for the rest of the festival.
Sure, because there are 125 movies that we're going to watch all tonight.
But I'm going to go back here. Yes.
Why did you pick Courtney Vance, and why did you make it an original couple?
So the question was about casting Courtney Vance and making it an interracial couple.
Great question.
Why was Courtney Vance the great actor?
Well, yeah, that was, some of it was, he's just so great. I used to have in the film, I think it's a really great question, by the way. In the script, you may remember at the end of the film, there's a homeless woman and she used to have a speech, basically, that said, "Where were you in the 70s when it was crack? Now it's in your neighborhood, now it's a disease." And, in all of my research and all of the people I talk to, there's a lot of understandable anger that our prisons are filled with a bunch of people who, when they were in the, just say no, 3 strikes, our prisons are packed with people, and mostly minorities, who are locked up for a long, long time. And now we don't want to lock people up because, well, it's still happening, but it's not happening in the same way. So I had that in the film, and it was a very pointed and very passionately feel this. But it felt, at that point in the story, completely wrong. At the same time, I also felt that this isn't I knew I didn't want the movie to be just a movie about a white family. I did this in Dan in Real Life. I've done this in all of my films. I've tried to normalize blended families or put people together that where I'm from in Iowa, people might go, "Oh, wait, but just make it normal. Make it normal." And I brought it up to Julia as an idea, and she loved it, and she loved the idea of Courtney B. Vance. And the only 2 changes I had to make in the script were, one, Ben used to make fun of how unfortunately he looked physically, and that had to go, because Courtney B. Vance is a man. And it also seemed like there was an opportunity for him to point out, and I really like this moment when, there were some higher powered people who wanted me to cut this moment, and I refused to, because I really wanted the point to be made. If he were black, he'd be in jail. And that's probably true, and we may not want to accept that, but that's a fact. So but mainly it was, Lucas came home from college. It really comes down to this. Lucas did 1 year of college, and he came home, and one of the first things when he came home, "Dad, you've got to see this." And he showed me this scene of James Earl Jones and Courtney B. Vance doing Fences on Broadway. You can see it on YouTube. And he said, "Watch this. This is amazing. This is amazing." I said, I was there opening night. I said, "I'm well aware of how great Courtney B. Vance is." But what I really wanted was a man, because I feel like the mother, the stepfather especially, and the sister to an extent, are a little underwritten, because it's more Holly and Ben's story. But I needed a man with gravitas who you knew loved. I wanted them to, and Courtney B. Vance is I don't even know where to start. He's one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever met. And he just fills moments with that decency and that goodness. So that's the best answer I can give you. But I do like finding ways to normalize things that 30 years ago it would have been Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or it would have been a whole movie about that. But that can be normal, and that should be normal. We can accept that. So that's what I tried to do. But I also gave an opportunity to make that point that I couldn't make at the end of the movie. We had to cut. It was a different point, but if he were black, he'd be in jail. And I think that's something we have to talk about. We have to talk more about. We have to really look at, because we have a prison system that is just making of some people a tremendous amount of money. But we just incarcerated so many people in America for drug crimes and they need treatment. And most people in America detox in jail. That's where they detox. It's a terrible place to detox. Many people die detoxing in jail. Anyway, I couldn't get that into the movie. Maybe the sequel. Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Really quick, what's the release date? So they can tell everyone.
December 7th. So it'll be in New York and LA, and the week after we'll be in Philadelphia, so it'll be December 14th.
Thank you.